Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Toledo. Glad everybody was able to make it. Hope everybody's enjoying their chicken wings and good luck with keeping your fingers clean. Now would be a great time to check into social media, let everybody know where you are and what you're excited about, but also turn your phones off, take a little bit of time, enjoy your fellowship and each other. I'd like to ask Whitney Keeler to come to the podium and deliver a reflection and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Whitney.
As we gather today to better understand the transformational projects we support through Toledo Rotary, I wanted to take a minute to reflect on why we choose to set long-term goals that will impact our community by reading this poem by Will Allen Dromgoole. It's called The Bridge Builder. An old man going alone highway came at the evening cold and gray to a chasm vast and deep and wide, through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen stream had no fear for him, but he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you are wasting your strength with building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You never again will pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build this bridge at evening tide? The builder lifted his old gray head. Good friend, in the path I have come, he said, there followed after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm that has been built has been as naught to me. To the fair-haired youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I am building this bridge for him. Now let's stand together for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Whitney. I have to actually make a comment. I love that you read that poem. When I joined the club in 2015, that was the first invocation I ever gave, was that exact same poem. And it's actually one of my favorites. So I love that you chose that. That's awesome. Does anyone have any guests with them today? And if so, could you please come to the floor, Mike, and introduce them?
President Travis, I have the pleasure today of introducing Gary Cates, who's the Chief of Philanthropy and Government Affairs Officer with ProMedica.
Excellent. Great to have you with us. Thank you.
I have with me today Tim Carroll. He is a financial advisor at Northwestern Mutual.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. Okay. So we're going to pretty much get straight to business at hand today, since we got a lot we'd like to accomplish. But before I asked Kevin to kind of take things over from here, if you all recall, we had a meeting about our transformational projects, I don't know, a month or so ago. And at the time, I think we all laughingly said, I think we created a lot more questions than answers. And so I want everybody to have a frame of mind going into today, which is, when we approved these transformational projects in 2019, a lot has changed. And if you look around this room has changed quite a bit since 2019. So as you're hearing about what was originally approved and what those projects are, were, can be, I want you all to think, what do you see our future as a club being when it comes to the transformational projects? Are they these projects? Are they different projects? This is meant to be a mentally stimulating conversation about what our club's future looks like in the terms of transformational projects. So I just kind of want to set that stage for you. And with that, I'd like to ask Kevin Mullen to come to the microphone and to take it from there. So thanks, Kevin.
So I'm used to the timing on these meetings, and I felt like I had more time, so I took a big old bite of cornbread And then Travis said, I'm gonna invite Kevin up. And I went, oh, swear jar. Foundation's gonna make a whole lot of money this year. Excited about today's conversation. I want to piggyback off of what Travis said, just by a show of hands. Who was not a part of the conversations in 2019 about our transformational projects? Okay, so there's a lot of fresh voices in the room. I want you guys to know that your opinion in the discussions today are every bit as valid as the folks that were a part of the discussions in 2019, our guests included, right? Gary, there's no doubt that you've got some experience with this work, with both transformational and grant making, all of the above. And so we're excited to bring the conversation together and talk about where we've been. I don't know that I don't think I actually grabbed the clicker. You want to go to the next slide while we're so we're going to be talking about our transformational projects. We're going to be talking about the original proposals. We'll talk about our current funds and then have a conversation. We'll turn it over to you guys to have a conversation at the tables about where we go from here. So if we can go to the next slide. So in 2019, we approved 3 projects. And there was a series of discussions over the course of a number of weeks where we met after Rotary meetings and breakout rooms at the Park Inn and heard presentations on different concepts and different ideas that we ultimately brought to the club and voted on. And the projects that received over 50% of the vote were approved to move forward. And so the projects we selected and advanced were universal pre-K, lead poisoning, identification, education, and treatment, and water advocacy. We'll go to the next slide. Let's dive in and talk specifically about universal pre-K education. These are the project outcomes as presented. Thanks, Dominic. Here we go. So this was, I've taken all of these as notes from the original proposals that were submitted back in 2019 that were voted on by the then members of the club. So we were going to assist with local and regional advocacy in favor of universal pre-K. If you'll remember at the time, there was a Mayor Wade Kapsakavich had a big conversation, had put on the ballot to approve universal pre-K. And for a lot of reasons that we don't need to get into today, that measure was not approved. We invested $10,000 toward conducting a needs assessment and a feasibility report to look at other markets, as Candace had shared a couple of weeks ago, look at other markets that have successfully implemented universal pre-K. And then we would assess based on research findings, the best way to support forward momentum of universal pre-K. The total budget that the universal pre-K had submitted at that time in 2019 was a total of $100,000. So thus far, we've spent 10,000. There's still 90,000 left for that kind of group to decide how we want to spend it. When we look at lead poisoning identification, education, and abatement, it was really largely an advocacy project. We're going to participate in using the power of Rotary to influence through advocacy with Ohio state legislatures and executive branch members who develop and implement the programs governing the health of our state waters. Again, a couple of weeks ago, past President Dick Wolf had shared the progress and update on that project. And we find ourselves largely I don't know what you're talking about, Dick. It looks great to me. All right, so apparently that never got edited. So the, trust me, it's right. Thank you, Dick. So the conversation around lead poison identification, education, and abatement, we were looking at different ways that we could help the community. There was an investment in Toledo Public Schools to assist with lead testing. And then, but largely the project at the time in 2019 was heavily focused on advocacy and being a lead thought partner. Hey, this looks an awful lot like the proposal for lead. Now this one's correct. So water advocacy, the priority on that one again was also to leverage Rotary's power as an influencer. The total budget at the time in 2019 was $6,000. 2,000 per year for 3 years, which was largely expenses for our club back and forth to Columbus, and then working with experts on crafting the messaging that our club could use in an advocacy role as we talk about influencing legislation at the state and local level to support cleaning up our waterways. Okay, so those were the 3 conversations, the 3 projects that were approved back in 2019. So I'm going to hand it off to Foundation Chair Jim Lehman to talk about our current fund balance.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I have the singular distinction of being the tallest presenter with the shortest presentation. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about where the money we have came from and where it's gone recently. Although our foundation has a long and rich history going back to 1915 of supporting community projects on a transformational basis like this. The history I'm going to present is only recent history, but we did have one of our biggest projects ever. In 2019, our Rotary Foundation donated $300,000 to fund the Middle Grounds Park. That's not on here. And I'm not going to read this line for line, but I actually got ahead of myself. There we are. Here's the sources of the funds that we've had most recently. And the vast majority of these monies have come from the annual It's a Ball that we used to have. That usually raised between $40,000 and $80,000. So that's the vast majority of the money we have right now to work with. And here's where we have funded projects specifically for transformational projects in the last 7 years. So you can see the funding has gone to the 3 main projects that Kevin outlined earlier. There's a really good video on our website that Clint Mock did explaining our transformational projects. So I'd encourage everyone to take a look at that when you get a chance. Make a long story short, we have $107,000 right now in our transformational fund waiting to be delivered to projects that will make a big difference in our community. Right now, the general idea is we fund the water project, the pre-K, and the lead abatement. But in reality, these transformational projects can be any project that is overwhelmingly supported by the club, that has a significant impact on our community, and that creates a sustainable project that will be able to keep itself going off into the future. So those priorities can be tailored to whatever the needs of the day are. So that's part of what our conversations today, I think, are intended to be about. So with that, any questions? I'd happy to make my best. Oh boy.
As we start this conversation, I'm just puzzled. Maybe on a normal 5-year process, we'd be asking questions, but you throw COVID in there and it takes 3 years kind of to pitch that out. So really, maybe 2.5 years in. Is the question, are we going to pull money from the projects? Because if that's the case, I'm kind of wondering, why would I ever bring a project forward if I know 2.5 years in, you're going to rip the money and go away?
Oh, no. We have no intention of unfunding anything that we've already approved.
So then I don't get the conversation over the 3 projects. Then if they're ongoing projects, just do an update and keep going. That's
Well, I think our goal today is to talk about potential other projects.
do we have the cash for it?
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's a fair question, Keith. I think it's as we look at these 3 projects and as we've talked with the committees on these 3 projects, a lot of the tasks that were in place in 2019, like some of them aren't still in place. And specifically universal pre-K is the one, at least from my perspective, that has shifted so much from where the conversation first started, right? So it was first envisioned to be our dollars, we're gonna, be married with a levy that passes, I think was at least the original vision from my perspective, having sat on the mayor's committee to work on that. That didn't pass. COVID happened. We've sort of sat. Now, other folks have stepped up and carried the water on that project. No pun intended to our other transformational project. But I think it's worth a conversation and worth the club to weigh in to say, where do we go from here? What do we do next, right? Do we continue to, for me, do we prioritize the project task list or do we prioritize the project theme? And so the task list, I think, has changed on lead abatement. We're in a very different climate on lead abatement in our community today than we were in 2019. Some of the tasks I think are relatively similar, but the work that we as a club can do today in lead abatement is different than what we could do in 2019, in part due to legislation that's changed. And so I think that's, for me, that's the purpose of the conversation today, is to give all of you a chance to weigh in with your perspectives on where we're at with these projects. What information do you want to know to say, do we continue moving forward? I think we've got the gift of hindsight in the present right now, that we've got the ability to look back and say, I think all three of these projects, from my perspective, this is not a board perspective, this is a Kevin as a member of the club, I think all three projects have stalled.
I would disagree with you, especially on pre-K. And there is another levy coming, so.
I want to clarify our work as a club. I think our work as a club on all three projects as they were presented in 2019 has stalled. That's
Okay.
my perspective.
We can have that debate. I would disagree with you, but we can
Okay.
have that debate. And I would prefer the committee come back and say, we've stalled, not just what's everybody's opinion. I'll sit down and let you proceed.
Okay. Kurt.
Just a quick question on Jim's slides. I noticed that the funding went to an international project, Honduras water project. I thought this was a local community opportunities and why the funding went to an international project and not a transformational community project. And should that be included in these expenditures?
Yeah. So
For
I can't.
$3,000.
Yeah. So I can't speak as to why the expenditure in 2021 came out of this particular fund. I can say that it was approved. I believe the grant was approved prior to 2021. Dean's coming to the microphone and should be able to address that. I mean, I know the project was approved. I guess for me, and Dean, maybe you can clarify why this came as a transformational fund versus an international services internal grant.
Correct. This is Dean Neese. I led the transformational project relative to that exact project. It was voted as one of the 4 transformational projects that's completed, so it's not in the conversation of today, but it was voted on by this club to be a transformational project. It was funded. We funded like a $80,000 project, but completed it for about a fourth of that. So I think it was a success, but it's no longer in conversation because it's complete.
And when was that vote, Dean? Because that was pre our 2019.
Correct. It carried into
Yep.
the 2019 conversation though, because the project vision started like in 2016, I believe.
Right. I think that's right. That's what I say. That was a conversation and approval prior to our 2019 transformational project vote. So Janina's going to be upset with me. Get ready.
No, I'm fine with you. It was a great project and very successful and very, I think, worthy of what the ideal of transformational projects are, that project. Different from that, though, has been the ongoing water project that has to do with Lake Erie and helping to clean up the nutrient pollution that causes the algae blooms. The $2,000 a year that was noted on the screen here, we never spent during COVID because we couldn't be traveling to
Mhm.
Columbus or any place. However, as I mentioned a month ago when we did our presentations, we did over 400 hours of contact with legislators, researchers, academicians by Zoom calls. So it ended up being a real bargain. And not only we helped influence people's minds, especially in regards to the H2 Ohio program, which has been funding tremendous opportunity for change where it needs to be in on our farms and in our coastal wetlands. We also learned, however, that we could participate in reinvigorating our wetlands in a way that we didn't realize Rotary was capable of doing by using really essentially small amounts of money. $10,000 in a wetlands reconstruction project is a small amount of money. And we were able to develop a process which got multiple Rotary clubs to participate in wetlands reconstruction projects along the rivers and the streams and the tributaries of the Maumee River, where it's most needed to reduce the nutrients that are passing over those wetlands areas. And that first project was done on the Maumee River near Napoleon. For anyone who went to see it, that was completed actually in 22. And we had a big grand opening for it. Over almost 300 people attended that. There were a total of 12 Rotary clubs in our district, pardon me, that eventually contributed to that, a total of about $60,000 from Rotary. And we got our name on the signboard. And through developing that process, we then petitioned for a change in our charter for the transformational project. And that's why what you heard from me a month ago was that we know that we can spend up to $20,000 a year, probably 10,000 apiece for 2 projects a year, and do wetlands reconstruction, help make it happen with Rotary's support.
Yeah, so I want to just clarify my point when I say that the project has stalled. I'm not saying that you guys haven't found
And I
new
didn't,
ways to do
I
it.
didn't think.
I
we
think the
were.
idea that we were going to hire a lobbyist to help us identify language has not happened.
No,
The trips back and forth to Columbus, they've happened in a different way,
yes.
but not at the expense and the cost that we expected.
Right.
I think there's no question that there's certainly opportunities for us to invest in each of these projects in different ways moving forward. I
Right.
guess for me as a member, my question, this is what I want to make sure we get to discussions at each of the tables, is I'm interested in where do these projects fall between transformational projects and a traditional grant, right? So if it takes $10,000 to do one of these projects, we have a grant process that can fund up to $10,000. I don't know that we need a transformational, again,
Under
this is
the
me
North
personally.
grant process, though, we couldn't do more than one every other year. So we couldn't do 2 a year for the next 3 years.
Potentially as an internal
Mhm.
grant, there might be some work through there, but that's a foundation conversation. I know there's some other conversations happening. I want to keep moving to make sure we have a chance to get to the table discussions.
Hey, I'm Reyes Chaudhry. First of all, I agree with Kevin, these projects have stalled. These are really chronic regional issues for our region itself. You know, pre-K, water quality, lead, and they move at a very slow pace. There can be a lot of federal, state, city money. In spite of all that, these problems have a very small change. And if we want to grow as a club, I would suggest we take a more visible project, which people see every day, and they're really impressed. Toledo Rotary has done that. It will attract us membership, make us grow. And that project can be a beautification of the city, you know, a gateway. You know, we spend 40, 50 grand to make a gateway welcome to Toledo. Or help a group of blind people, you know, who cannot support themselves. We did something for them. So I really think we need a more visible and loud project to attract more members. And these projects won't change. Senators talk about them, congressmen talk about them, mayors talk about them, but year after year, there's a very minimal change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Brent Cousineau. I'm really glad we're talking about this topic. To me, this is like really exciting because this is where Rotary hits the road and the rubber hits the road of where we can move the needle. And so the $10,000 grants, they're all great. We get we feel good about them. Good things happen with them. But when these were identified, these are really big issues. So I think about it in terms of, can we add value? Like as we sit here today, can we add value to water? I think the answer is yes. I think what they've done is shown that, and to me, these are like, it's not just us. We got to draw in a lot of other people. And Janina's done an awesome job. We leveraged our 10,000 to 60,000 because we've got all these other clubs involved. And that's what, and water is such a massive issue. It's going to take a lot of people. Marcy's been involved, et cetera, et cetera. It's a 5 to 10 year play. To me, a transformational project, it's a 5 to 10 year play. It's not just about money. And I think about I don't think see Sierra here, but she's all about membership engagement. This is the opportunity for us to get our minds and our hands in these things. And we've already been doing that, but hopefully even more of that, which would be to Ria's point of attracting more members. So is water still, in my mind, huge issue, right? Can we make a difference? I think we can. Pre-K, that's a tough one. It's really, really important, right? I think I certainly identify with that. Could we make a difference? If we chose to, I think we really could. Lead, that's a big, bad problem. I understand there's been some funding things that have maybe changed that problem a little bit, which is great, but can we add value? That's how I look at it.
Thank you. All right, so I'm just going to preempt this this is going to be our last question from the podium. Otherwise, we'll be doing this the whole meeting. I want to make sure that you guys have a time at your tables to weigh in with discussions and answer some of the questions that we're asking at a high level.
Yeah.
Bob.
So I'm going to echo some of what Brett just said. And Sierra's, I'm now back in the corner back there. So I saw her light up when we talked about membership. And I think to the question of, should this be a grant or do we need a transformational project? Exactly what Brent was just saying. Committees were formed for these. Did things slow a little bit? Everything slowed a bit in the last 4 years. In all aspects of the committee. Also didn't have the levy when that went up, which lots of groups, including ProMedica, was not just the city leading. But I agree that this group has a lot more power and clout than we probably usually use, or we have the ability to affect more projects, and taking the time to work on these with concerted effort and having the committee, and Gina and the crew, and Gary Corrigan, I think, has led some of the lead efforts. And they're going to take a while. They're transformational projects. You can't just go do something for 60 days and all of a sudden transform the whole city, or else we'd all be out doing that all the time. So I think what was started was the right thing. It even looks like the numbers are there to still do these things. And my question actually has nothing to do with the projects. Is one of the reasons that we're able to do these projects and put money behind them was because of it's the ball. And I wonder, are we going to resurrect that or something similar to help with the time that people still want to put in?
Yeah, so I can at a high level, I can say there is some conversation about future fundraising, future fundraisers. There's talk about a golf outing coming at some point in time. We were originally thinking fall. We want to make sure we plan this right. We want to make sure Bob's got enough time to rally his dollars to be the title sponsor of that golf outing. Thanks for that commitment, Bob. And so that's likely going to be coming hopefully in the spring. And there's some conversations about some other possible, look, this isn't going to happen if we don't raise money to do it, right? And so part of the conversation, one of the questions that we have is $107,000 enough to be transformational? And I know that it's about more than just money, because every member around this table, I would say that our club isn't 300 members strong. Our club is 300 networks strong. We're 300 businesses strong. When we rally all of our networks, all of our company and resources together, there isn't anything that I don't think this club can tackle. And that's why I'm excited about having this conversation. All right, so we're going to break up at our tables. We want to talk about your impressions of our current transformational projects. Are there any specific concerns or reservations about moving forward with any or all of these? I believe you've got someone at each and every table. Can I have somebody raise their hand at the table if you believe you're moderating the discussion at your table? If you don't have someone raising their hand at your table, Yep. Roy, I love the hesitation from Roy as he's looking like someone else. Please raise your hand. No, Roy, it's you. You got this. Okay, so there's a series of questions that are on each one of the tables. I put a couple of them up on the screen as well. We're going to give you guys some time. Let's say, let's come back in like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. Let's say 15 minutes. We'll come back and talk and we'll have an opportunity for you guys sort of report out on what you guys have discussed so we can all learn from everybody. All right. Thank you.
So should the Zoom group do our own?
We pretty much have to, Joe. Go ahead.
That's a great idea.
So anybody have any specific concern? I'm just going to start so that we can get talking. I don't plan to be a leader or I'm not reporting on this, but any concerns or reservations about going ahead with these projects?
I think they're all worthwhile.
Yeah, we must have started almost a decade ago with the water, so we ought to keep going with all the different things to clean up Lake Erie. I mean, it's got to be a big push to stop the nutrients coming down the river.
Actually, I think we started discussing transformational projects back in 2014 when I was a president. We started talking more, and we did the It's a Ball, and we raised a good chunk of money, and then people didn't want it just to go into normal grants, but they wanted it to go into something that would have impact.
And that first round of grants funded the early language development program at East Toledo Family Center, which
Right.
was a 3-year commitment that we did and finished and spent the money on. I think it gets a little confusing when it's put in there like it's still part of what's going on now for pre-K. It wasn't. It's a finished project.
But I think sort of at the core of some of the whole problem with transformational projects is lack of communication on results. So what happened what happened to the East Toledo project that we had an impact? Have they done a review or a report on it that we can?
We did do a report and we did submit it. The feeling was that it was too small a project to really have a direct effect. If we wanted to, a dramatic effect. If we wanted to do something more long-term, there was thought that might have more. It was certainly our naivete on how to be the hands-on supervisors of a project like this. Mike McIntyre, Libby Rupert, and I were at East Toledo Family Center more days of the week than I can count. But there was a series of changes in leadership, and things did not gain as much as we would have liked.
Hey, Tim.
I would like to take a little bit of exception to the idea that we've been frozen, at least in terms of water and the environment. I'm not in agreement with that at all. A lot has happened. We've brought on national speakers. We've had 2 conferences. We put together an example for the world with that 61-acre project in Napoleon. We brought hundreds of people to a tent from both Rotarians from all over the district and the local community to talk about water. We've influenced politicians. We've got in the hopper multiple projects that could look a lot like what we did in Napoleon. We have, as I said, we've been speaking to politicians, telling them about the importance of supporting H2 Ohio. We've attracted private money. We've built up members across the district. And for the first time, we have district leadership looking at this on a holistic level to bring multiple Rotary clubs together to do again what we've just accomplished in Napoleon. It's too slow for all of us, but it's been successful. And I got to say, if we were to pull out of doing what the $10,000 units that we've been putting in, nothing would happen. The Napoleon project wouldn't have happened. The other projects that we're talking about won't happen because the district and private donors look to the Toledo Rotary Club to provide leadership in this. This is one of the proudest things I've ever been associated with the Toledo Rotary Club. We really are making a difference. It attracts members, it attracts funding, and it couldn't happen without us. I did not fall into perfect agreement with the fact that we could handle a $10,000 project every year outside of the transformational thing. Within the documents for the foundation, it's pretty clear that you do one every other. You can only support an entity once every other year. And we would like the ability to do 2 a year. Additionally, I think that the board should always have control of the money, but we should have an understanding that we want this stuff to go forward. And if 2 things come up and it's 1 year and it's outside of the normal process, so what? This does what Rotary is supposed to do. It brings people together, it involves the outside community. It's solving a problem that we still need to get solved. And, we're still boiling water in Toledo. I mean, there's a lot of messages here. We need to continue with this. I'm off my high horse now.
I agree, Jim. I mean, now automatic sampling equipment can be put in and identify the sources. And when you identify the source, you can identify the solution.
Many possibilities here. Bob, you just raised a good one. So we started the process of using students to sample water out at the zoo and in other places. It wasn't as good as we'd like because the academics wouldn't accept the processes, the technology we're using. But then they started doing it on their own and getting I don't know if they're getting better information or not, but would they have done it without us? I don't know. We're setting an example here that we can all be proud of.
I think what might be helpful, when we first started this way back when, we allocated, like, once we approved that East Toledo Family Center was going to get the grant for our first 3, and it was a 3-year commitment. Everyone got together, voted on the fact that it would be a 3-year commitment. It would be $100,000 total, and it would be 33, 33, 33. Rather than just, and I see what you're saying, Tim, you might need more in a year, and maybe it just needs to be written in to whatever dollar amount it is for the total. That can be used over a period of 3 years or whatever we denote the time period would be, and they can draw on it as needed.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, but I don't think they'll go for it. And if I was them, I wouldn't either, because they're going to want to have control of it. They being the existing Rotary Club leadership. But
But if the membership, which you are around the table right now, and there were members' voices who were not going along with things, if the membership votes that this is what they want, this type of thing, they're gonna have to do it.
well, I would like us, okay. First of all, I'm in total agreement with you, but maybe we could finesse them. You know,
Hey, Joe's good at finessing,
Joe's good at finessing, and I nominate Joe as our spokesman.
as our finesser.
Denied.
That won't work.
What does Lisa McDuffie say, or Hannah?
I don't think you want to hear it.
Oh, I absolutely want to hear it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
No, well, guys, let me just say, I'm a little hesitant to share only because I'm not sure I'm on the same page with even answering the first part of the question. And I think I can't remember who really broached it in the very beginning, but not everyone is as familiar as my friend Mr. Tim is in talking about the history and giving really the current state of all of the projects that was just flashed before us. And so how do you really, from a place of equity, even answer the question on whether or not we should be
2-minute warning, 2 minutes.
supporting what we just saw? And I can't, and I, I mean, in all honesty, I just can't. And so some of them I know a little bit about, but I would have much preferred to have a white paper, not necessarily pages worth of a white paper, but a little bit of an update, a little bit of a brief of really the state of what's happened and where we are now in terms of the impact that we've made, to help me really formulate some thinking behind whether or not I think we need to keep supporting it. And then to jump down to the number 2 question, there's a whole ton of things in the community, because from 10 years to now, think of all the things that have surfaced that are new problems, in addition to the problems that were around 10 years ago. So I don't know, I'm a little stuck, and certainly there's not enough money to address all societal ills, but we got to start somewhere. And so I like what I heard about water, even from where I sit, addresses a lot.
All right, so we're going to
of
bring everybody
things.
back to the large group.
I mean, where do we go with
We
this?
got about 14 minutes left in our regularly scheduled
You
meeting.
shouldn't
I think
have
you guys are all
asked.
planning
I
on
was
being
gonna
with us
sit
till about
quiet.
3 or 4 today. We'll get this all
I'm
resolved.
glad we asked.
Let's do this. I'm going to ask a representative from each table to make their way to the floor mic.
Me
And
too.
in an attempt to get everybody in, we're going to try and be brief with our recap of the discussions that happened. Jackie kindly is going to take notes for us so that the board, as well as the foundation trustees, can review and help provide some guidance to the club on how we proceed. Past President Dick.
Okay, thank you, Vice President Mullen. Kevin, our table is unanimous in feeling that the current transformational projects are very worthwhile, should be sustained. We don't see that they would cost a lot of money in the next year or two. We would have time, if money is necessary, to have more fundraisers to bring in more money. But we see them as truly transformational for this community. And what it's going to take is engagement of this group to partner with other leaders in this community to get them done. And we think it's needed for somebody to take the lead, because some of these are stagnating and somebody's got to do this for the sake of this community. So we're behind these 3 projects.
Awesome. Thank you, Dick.
Our table decided that the projects were worthwhile but we think there ought to be a lot stronger definition of goals and objectives. There maybe look at that again, a little bit of project management for these projects, if you will. We also thought it was appropriate to re-examine what those projects need and if there isn't a high enough need to look at other things to do. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chuck.
I don't want to repeat what I've heard, but there was a commonality there. What I want to speak to is the investment I and Tim Ryan and Janina in particular have spent on the water. Okay, and that thing is, the first thing is it's ultimately over time it has shifted from water to environment. And that was Tim's initiative. Second, it's really broken down to two projects. One is still the advocacy. The other one is the wetlands. So we got two things going now. I was involved in that 400 hours. And over that time, we talked to about 25 different constituencies and identified about 15 to 20 issues. What we found in there was those 25 were really vested in their own area of interest. But the challenge is of bringing those really vested people together in one room. Okay, and we've got that problem and challenge across our country in different types of complexity. So right now, where we've boiled that one down to is, let's just work more with Marcy. Let's just get more closer what Marcy's doing for one reason. And when she was here with us, it's very clear, by the way, I've got it. This isn't nervousness. This is a physical thing. But with Marcy, when she was here, you could see she was already vested. And as Janina says, she's getting to that point where I think she's looking for a legacy project. And I think this could be it. So let's put that aside because Janina and I were just talking about just how do we approach Marcy. Now let's talk about Tim Ryan for a minute. Tim Ryan has been our president. You know, when he was the president, he really got vested. He's going to be the district governor now. Okay. And he has been the ones that moved us from advocacy to action. Okay. And that's where we moved over to the wetlands project. And he's already formed partnerships, or we're already forming a partnership with Black Swamp Conservancy. The metro parks are really interested in what we're doing. And what's most interesting now for me and Janina is that he's going to be the district governor, and he's already gotten how many clubs now, Janina? Several to get vested in being part of a district-wide wetlands restoration. Okay, now the thing that's also interesting about that one is it all is about tree planting. Okay, and if you want to engage a Rotary Club, everybody just dedicate 2 days during the year, and we all get out there and we plant trees. Okay, and then if you could build enough of a momentum behind that, I think you could create a magnet almost to bring other groups into that kind of a project. So I'll just leave it at that. But what I do know is that the people we haven't got in that committee, and I can name several others, there's a level of enthusiasm and momentum here that I would encourage us to just keep leaning into it.
Thank you very much.
So we had a number of newer members, at our table. And so they were bringing up a lot of the point of information, right? Just trying to get more information about the transformational projects. They may not have been here at the presentations a month ago on these, but I think more sharing of this information that's going on with the transformational projects, the better, right? And then to past President Chuck's point, they were the same way about, who's running this, who's actually making the effort to keep these things going, because they still, at least at our table, all still sounded like very worthy projects. And then the last thing is money. I mean, I think everybody was in a general agreement that we do need to have it, whether it's another ITSA, whether it's some other fundraising vehicle of some sort, but we need to find more funds for it so we can look to partner with others in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
So at our table, yeah, it was kind of an interesting discussion for sure. And while I think we all think that these transformational projects are important, what they're doing. It seemed like our table wasn't sure like what was being done, what is getting done, where are we at? And is it even possible for us to make that influence? And there was a lot of agreement too on what Riaz had said about, having something that you can put the Rotary to more visible type of project. Not that these projects aren't important, but that's kind of the impression that our table basically had. So thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, our table had a very similar sentiment to Roy and Scott's in regards to we support our current projects, but we would like to see a little bit more regular information, the status of the project, whether they think they can still see it to fruition, what the monetary needs might be to see it to fruition, because then of course we can make a good decision in regards to how we're going to fundraise and financially support them. But a lot of it for us framed around additional information on the existing projects and not to pull the rug out from under an existing project that the members have voted for.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Hello. Hello, I'll be brief just because a lot of what was already said is kind of what we talked about as well. We were definitely more in favor at our table of the transformational project of pre-K and water because we felt like it was an even balance of supporting people and supporting our environment. We also felt like those were two projects that we felt we could see what our real impact was, whereas lead, while we realized it's important, incredibly valuable, the amount of work that needs to be done around that, we just really do not have the power to transform. And so even in 3 years, what kind of dent could we really make in all that needs to be done? And so that was pretty much the sentiments. Another thing that we talked about was related to lead, since it is still important and it's a lot of important voices in the room, we could serve in the capacity of advocacy and awareness, bringing speakers to Rotary to come and talk to us about it, educate our community so we could be the voices and ambassadors outside of Rotary in the community. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace.
Okay, much like everybody else, one of the biggest things that we talked about though, perhaps is maybe it's time to sit down and redefine what our role is, what the issues are, what the causes are, redefine our role and move forward. We never even got to talk about the money. We didn't get past that. But the other thing we talked about is certainly we need to learn how to create some advocacy for our transformational projects.
Thank you, Past President Sharon.
At our table, there was a lack of consensus on just about anything. First of all, we were debating whether these are programs or projects. Is there a definitive end as a project or a program which needs continued advocacy? We believe it's a program and it continues to need our advocacy toward all three subjects. The second piece was that lack of communication of where we are, what's been done so that the club knows what's happening. And third, new goal setting for each of these so we know where we're headed.
Thanks, Kurt.
So one thing about being second last in line is there's not a lot of new thoughts and ideas coming out, but I will say we did probably have the youngest table over there in the back left. And I think just the awareness of the projects, what their goals are, reporting that more frequently to the overall club. So new members as they come on board can understand that piece as well as anything else. I think we're as a Rotary club, we recognize and our table recognize that it's not just the funding, but the advocacy power, the network power that this group has. We need to rely on that more fully and having a better awareness, especially as new members, to be able to embrace that a little bit more is going to be very important. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Hello, I'm Mike Noble. Some of the things we talked about at our table are the same things that we're hearing already, which is if there's any concern, it would just be, that these are very large issues. And so, some of them can seem like, could need unlimited amount of funds to accomplish. But what our group all agreed on is that we don't necessarily need to, have the end solution for any of these things, but really just seeing progress, we think is a valiant effort. And, having all the work that's gone into choosing these, I think it's okay to check in and know what the direction is, but continuing to move forward on them is something we all agreed on. Just as I serve in a district role as well for our district. And so one thing to point out that I've learned in conversations with Janina and with others around water is the idea that with the H2 Ohio program that we can put forth, you know, say $50,000 or $100,000 to acquire a property can be leveraged up into millions of dollars in water restoration. I think that's just worth pointing out. And just in terms of working with the district, one thing to keep in mind is that if we want to do a project and get a district match, which I believe these funds would be eligible for being as a club contribution, that just would have to be submitted to the district by the beginning of the Rotary year. So that wouldn't be possible at this point, but just something to think about as we move ahead. And so that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Hello, this is from Joe Topolsky, from our Zoom friends. A reminder, don't lose the sight of the impact that Rotary has. Do a report for each area to give the history and the status. And then a reminder many of our newer members are not familiar with the history. That's all he gave me.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Dominic. I'm just going to briefly, while Dominic comes up there, I do want to just say thank you, Dominic and Zach, for all their hard work. It's not easy moving to a completely different location, and they do a wonderful job. So I appreciate their help running all of our meetings every week. So thank you. All right, so with that, I am going to hand the grenade pin out to President Travis for closing thoughts.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you to all of you. I got a kick out of this in a way, and maybe I'm just warped, but I loved listening to this room talk and just immediately the chatter at all the tables. And I kind of walked around and kind of gave it an ear. And a couple of weeks ago, when I gave that little talk, I mentioned something about different personalities, different belief sets. And as you walked around the room, you heard that in action, but everybody was talking about the same topics. And that is what's going to make whatever comes out of this day today a stronger solution. It's not somebody hammering at it saying, no, we have to do it like this. It's all of us coming together saying, how do we as a group agree to move forward? So thank you to all of you for being here. I know a different venue is not always the easiest place to get people to come. I love that we got a good turnout, that we had great conversation. And I just appreciate all of you being a part of the solution and not just a spectator.